It was kind of depressing, but then we got very excited. We're like, oh my God, we can't just leave that in this storage room. Like, we have to do something about it.
This is a deeper listen from listener-powered KEXP. This is the show where we talk with musicians about the thoughts and the experiences that shape their music. I'm Roddy Nikpour. The indie band Ivy is releasing new music this year. And if you're thinking that Ivy, yes, the very same Ivy that was mostly active from the 90s through the mid-2010s. My colleague Janice Headley spoke with the band a few years ago about one of their iconic albums that was recently reissued called Apartment Life, which originally came out in 1997. The last time that Ivy put out an album of new original music was in 2011. And that album was called All Hours. Now, in 2025, Ivy has reassembled to bring us brand new music on the album Traces of You, which came out September 5th on Bar None Records. Standing in my leather jacket, the party's going on, yeah, watch it now. Backing up into a corner, feeling like a ghost that's hanging round. Take me to another feeling, heavy spinning leaves me reeling on and on. Guess I never kicked the habit, 'cause you know I got to have it till I lose it all. What makes this album extra special is that it includes parts from one of the members who has since passed away, Adam Schlessinger. He died from complications of COVID-19 in 2020. The other surviving members, Andy Chase, Dominique Durand, and Bruce Driscoll, wrote 10 brand new songs that all incorporate demos that Adam was on. And there was no need for artificial intelligence to restore the recordings, by the way. They were fortunate to record almost everything they did with high fidelity. I spoke with Ivy about making this record and what these songs mean to them. First, though, I wanted them to catch us up on the time between their latest album and the newest one because, that's a 14-year gap. So here's Dominique kicking us off.
It was a very turbulent time at this moment in our life, the three of us. Adam was very busy with all these other projects. He was really focusing more and more on writing for TV and TV shows and theater. I think Andy, don't want to speak for him, but I think he was getting tired of, being in Ivy and frustrated with, his relationship with Adam and I. And anyway, we had a tour booked for All Hours. And finally, at the last second, I actually decided to cancel the tour. So the promotion for that record was kind of messed up. And then we all decided to take a hiatus for Ivy. I went on to do some music exhibition.
Yeah, you were curating, which is interesting. Yeah. You were putting the whole show together with your cousin. So this is Andy. I, like Dominique just revealed, against my will, no, I'm just kidding. I was going through a lot of, I guess, what do you want to call it? You know what? The world calls it a midlife crisis. I suppose that's what it was. It was 2012. I had been literally spoken to Adam every single day of my life since 1991. And he and I were so intertwined in Ivy, and we owned a recording studio in New York City called Stratosphere Sound. And we had taken family vacations together, Dominique and I and our kids, and Adam and his wife and his kids. And it had been great, but it was really, as friends do, they go through the good, the bad, and the ugly together. And that, 2012 was mostly bad and ugly. And I'd had enough. I'd had enough of being an Ivy. I was also a singer, and I had a band that I started with Bruce here called Camera 2. I wanted to break away. Adam had Fountains of Wayne, and it just seemed unfair to me. He had all these other outlets and I did not. I was just like, F it. all of this stuff. I'm done with Ivy. And so Camera 2 got a huge tour, 2013, 14, opening up for this band called Walk Off the Earth. And that sort of pulled me even further away from the world of Ivy and Adam. And that kind of set a course for the next 5, 6, 7 years where I kind of fell out of touch with Adam.
So I'm curious about the context of the demo. So this new album that Ivy has called Traces of You, a lot of it is made up of demo tracks that Adam recorded with you guys. So I'm curious about, especially given that context, that there was kind of some bitterness at some point. Like, what was the context of those demos that Adam had recorded? Like, when were they from? And at what point did you actually decide to revisit those demos?
So this is Dominique talking. It was never a plan. We never had a plan to make a new record at all. What happened is after Adam's passing, we got all our back catalog reverted to us because our deal with Network Records was done. And so we decided at that point, of course, Adam is not there, so he can't, unfortunately, make the decision with us. But I kind of felt we should go back to the guy who discovered Ivy back in '94, and that was Mark Lipsitz, who now was working at Barnum Records.
Well, he wanted us to go back to our old files and see if there were any like unfinished songs that he could release
as a B-side,
just to help promote, our albums, which had been out for decades. So we were looking for, 1 or 2 unreleased tracks.
And in the process of that, we going through our archives, and imagine this is like from 94 to 2012, 13. So we discovered all these, demos, and some songs were sort of almost finished, but we couldn't even remember where they were from, and tons of ideas, unfinished ideas. And we were so puzzled by it. And at first it was, when we listened to them, it was kind of sad because it was all this material that we did with Adam, and Adam being not there. And so it was kind of depressing. But then we got very excited. We're like, oh my God, we can't just leave that in this storage room. Like, we have to do something about it.
They all had Adam playing on it because that's how we would work. Adam and I and Dominique would go in the studio and just like put down sketches. Sometimes it was just Adam on drums and me on guitar, and Dominique like singing like a little simple melody. Other times there were songs that we discovered in this treasure trove, and Dominique and I would look at each other like, oh, whoa, what happened to this? Wait, I remember this. So we would take our phones out and Shazam it, but then sometimes nothing would happen. Like Shazam would just give us that question mark, like, can't find anything.
I just want to be clear what you're saying, because that's pretty funny. So you were listening to old demos that you guys had recorded sometime between the 90s and like early 2010s, and not sure if you released that song already. So you would Shazam the demo and see if it would come up because it's the same riff that you might have released.
Exactly. And then Dominique and I, when we realized we hadn't released it, but it was so familiar to us, obviously, then we'd start arguing about why. It's like, I'm like, oh yeah, that was you, Dominique. You're the one who railroaded that song. She's like, I did not. I think that was you. Didn't you say you thought it was too cheesy? So anyway, by the time we had taken stock of what we had, and this was running the gamut. I mean, it was like the history of sound recording. I mean, we had stuff on analog tape. We had stuff on DAT tape, on ADATs. In Pro Tools, we had stuff on hard drives. I mean, it was really like a museum of recording history since the early 90s to the mid 2000s.
Let's talk about the collaborations on the album. I mean, obviously Adam, but like definitely Bruce, because you were former backing keyboardist and guitarist for Ivy. Is that what I understand?
That's right. I first met these guys and became friends with them because I'm a fan of Ivy, and I sent them demos with a band I had with my sister. Well, we were called The Stare initially, but then we got sued by the Fred Astaire estate. So then it, yada, yada, yada. It became Blonde Fire, and then I really didn't expect to get that phone call because I thought Adam was gone, Ivy must be done. And so when they called me and asked me if I wanted to go through all these old ideas and demos, I was like, of course. The mandate from Andy and Dominique was that it had to have Adam on it. So if Adam wasn't on a specific track, even if we liked it, we had to ditch it.
That makes me think of one of the quotes from your press release, Andy, when you said that you were like a school of fish, 3 little fish missing that 4th fish, all swimming in perfect union with each other, going through both the highs and lows. So can you talk about like you weren't trying to be too on the nose when it comes to like writing lyrics about we miss Adam, but at the same time, like you felt that he was there in that way that, I mean, his music was, right? You had these archives.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to stress that Adam, as much as we loved him, was a finicky dude. And very, like it was really hard to be in a band with him, especially he played bass, right, in Ivy. So if you were, God forbid, you were the drummer. I mean, it's like we chewed through drummers. Every tour was be a different drummer. Like, he was tough, and he was tough on everyone who played with us, and he was tough on everyone he interacted with in his life. He was a real taskmaster, and the only really person that passed muster with him that Adam, I wouldn't say worship, but Adam really, really deeply respected Bruce in every way. So Bruce was the likely person to come in and help us finish it.
Something else you say in the press release, Andy, is that inevitably there were songs where we liked the direction they were going, but they didn't really work with the old parts Adam had put down. So we had to make it work, or else we couldn't use the song. So you kind of set that rule, like you were saying earlier. Is there a favorite like moment or part, either a favorite moment that you guys wrote that you're excited to play, or like a really tricky thing that you did that you're so proud of that no one's going to know that it was so tricky to get that part of the song? You know what I mean?
Well, the first thing that jumps to mind is there was an idea, maybe Bruce or Dominique, you remember it. It was the demo was called Duotone. So one of our close friends owned a little recording studio in New York City called Duotone. And so Adam was actually singing, I think as a melody idea, just to make us laugh, Duotone, Duotone. And Bruce, do you remember what song that became?
Yeah, we used the vocal in Wasting Time.
I'm pretty sure that the only really remaining vestiges of Adam on that are this breakdown later in the song where you can kind of hear him in the distance singing Duotone. Adam had a great sense of humor. So he'd say, I have a great idea. And we're like, okay. And we're expecting, real results. And he'd go into the mic and he's like, keep your mind open, Dominique. This is, because it's, and then he'd go Duotone in a really like goofy voice. His whole purpose was just to make us laugh. And that was not serious at all. And the irony is he'd be surprised and shocked and maybe smiling that we somehow used that in what ended up being like a very deep, sensitive, serious song. There was no humor or irony in it.
That's a good segue just to talking about some of the songs and just the vibe of the album. The sound is really fresh. Like, I really like that. I can tell you guys didn't stay tied up in 2012, but at the same time, like, we can tell that it's still the band. I think that's like a really hard thing to achieve, and it's full sounding, and you got these cool things like the flute mellotron thing on tracks like Mystery Girl. I really liked that personally.
Thank you.
That's Dominique.
Yeah, it's totally Dominique. She's like, I would say she has a very bizarre obsession with the mellotron flute.
I have a flute fetish.
She does. She brought these two huge flutes to the studio in Martha's Vineyard.
And I said, the only thing I want on this record is I want flute on every song. There's so much you don't know. There's so much you don't know. There's so much you don't know.
A lot of the freshness of the production, really, though, I have to really give credit to Bruce. Dominique and I had no perspective on this and probably would have fleshed it out, tipping our hat to where we were in 1999, but Bruce wasn't having that. I mean, Bruce really set the bar for finishing these as if it's us in 2023.
Bruce, can you try to speak a little bit to what Andy's saying about like what you brought in terms of production?
Yeah, I love Ivy. Again, I can't say that enough. So I recognized if something sounded a bit apartment life, and if it sounded a bit long distance, and I think we leaned into it a bit on some of them because we liked that it was kind of across the whole career. You could hear maybe Mystery Girl sounds like it's a bit more from apartment life. It's the best thing she's ever had. Maybe The Great Unknown sounds maybe like it's a bit more from long distance.
You can't find the undertow. How long till you let go?
You know, and then there were songs where we would try to add a bunch of stuff and then realize that we'd gone too far and then go back to something closer like the demo was. Like Fragile People was like that. Like we'd put real drums on it, we'd done all kinds of mixing stuff, and then we realized that the first thing we had done when we all got together and Dominique had put vocals on it was the best thing.
There's so many hooks, like melodies, and that's just, you know, expected, but like always wow. Like the first song, Midnight Hour, I loved turning the album on and hearing that and already, you know, do.
By the way, those doot-doos that Dominique is singing, she sung that back in the late 90s, because that was a demo early in our career. And it was actually, I think, started as a submission for maybe a TV show or something. And so they didn't need lyrics. So it was interesting trying to finish that song, 20 years later or so, comparing her old vocals with the new.
We kept the first verse, the vocal, that I had recorded back in 96 or 97. And then I sung the second verse today. I mean, like just last year or whatever. And we were like, I don't think that's going to work because it's going to be so different, right?
Well, you said almost, that.
Yeah,
you said that.
20 years later, the voice obviously changed, right? But I was kind of like into the idea of like having that song with like an old vocal verse from like 20 years ago and a new one. Anyway, it ended up being unbelievable. Like we can barely hear the difference.
The midnight hour is calling. I'm looking for myself.
There's a little bit more cigarette smoke in that second verse.
I'm walking through a dream. The moonlight is so blinding. The walls beneath my feet. It looks so small.
Another really catchy one that I was listening to again was Heartbreak, because you got the horns going. It's super upbeat. But then the song is called Heartbreak because it's about heartbreak. And I'm curious about that one, like how that one came together.
Don't say you haven't met the one. I don't believe in love. No, me and you, it's no use. We break into, that's what we do. Love is just a fiction we made up.
That was an outtake from when we were writing and recording for Apartment Life. And I blame Dominique for not having finished it back then.
So much blaming going on.
I take full credit. I do remember this one.
You do.
There was something just very annoying to me. We decided to just, to put it on the side.
That's a nice way of saying what you decided.
But then when Bruce heard it, he was like really into it. And he was like, no, I think we can do something very cool. And I think one of the continuity of Traces of You, this new record, is that, we went back to all the people, all the musicians that contributed on Ivy's career.
Oh, wow.
So we call Eric Matthew, this trumpet player who's amazing and did a lot of stuff for Ivy on Apartment Life, especially because that's where we have a lot of trumpets. And then we called up, Jody Porter from Fountains of Wayne, the guitar player. So we also brought back a lot of these old-time musicians. And so to give a little bit of the spirit of Ivy and keeping it in, like kind of our big family.
And Brian Young, he toured with Ivy back in the late 90s for our Apartment Life tour. He's been Fountains of Wayne's drummer since the beginning. He's playing drums on Heartbreak.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really special. I didn't know that these were so many people on the album. Not just Bruce, but who had toured with you guys already, but like these other people who are the guests on the album are a lot of people you've already worked with before. So this album is kind of a big compendium of Ivy's history in a lot of ways.
Oh, totally. That's what we wanted. Yeah.
Some of the big singles were Say You Will and Fragile People. The Great Unknown, the lyric, Don't Look Back Now, Find a Way Out. Despite it being a big retrospective of Ivy in some ways, it's like you took what was behind you and now you're looking forward and you found a way out with it. And maybe I'm just, the vibe I'm getting from the album a little bit is like, we're not staying in the past, but we found a way out with all the stuff from Adam and all these people.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned that line, Don't Look Back Now, Find a Way Out, that's a really good example of Dominique had never done vocals with anyone else other than me. And so, meaning I was recording and looking at her through the window of the control room, and she would be, and I'd be coaching her. And that always led to fights because she, because we were married and, can you imagine husband and wife and one is directing her on how to sing. And it was just, the results were good, but the process was difficult for her. And this was the first time in her career that somebody else did it, because Bruce was behind the board and coaching her for all the vocals on this new record. And I was just playing Tetris in the other room. It was fantastic for everybody. And that line, that's an example of Bruce coaching a vocal performance out of her that we hadn't heard before. Like, she's really belting it there, and she sounds great.
Let me address the title track, Traces of You, because again, on the surface level, it's like, oh, Adam, we miss Adam. And I think I assume that's true a little bit.
I wish I could forget just how good that it was. Every thought of you breaks me in two. I'm falling. Feels like gravity's calling. I loved you. You're gone, no traces of you.
But again, insofar as this is a huge monument to Ivy's career so far, it's almost like yourselves too, right? Like traces of yourselves throughout.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also traces of these songs. Everything is about, in a way, traces. And also, we did all these videos, and even in these videos, there's traces of Adam everywhere. So, we put visual all over the video, like photos of Adam or, his name, and you kind of the audience has to sort of look for it.
That's like on the track Say You Will, which was one of the big singles, where that music video is a lot of shots of you guys and Adam, and it's really evocative, and and the lyrics, right? I mean, there's so many double entendres. There's like the surface level kind of interpretation that applies to someone's everyday life, maybe, but then there's like the story that you guys are telling about yourselves, right? Like, guess I better start again. Say you will, say you won't. That's like, we're starting this project again. How much of this is about Adam versus how much of this is about I can imagine a situation where someone's trying to leave someone and saying like, I'm trying to build my life again. Are you going to be part of it or not? And I hope you kind of don't, like that sort of thing.
Exactly.
I think we all like the ambiguity of lyrics. We like being on point enough, but still in a vague enough way. So I think when everybody hears it and has their own idea of what the lyrics are about, I think that's a successful song.
In the shade of your ego, I was nothing new. Guess I better start again. Say you will, say you won't. Guess I better try again. Say you will, say you won't.
The album closer, Hate That It's True, is the song. It's definitely got that lyrical ambiguity, but that's almost the most direct song about you guys addressing Adam, where it's like you didn't really get a goodbye with him before he passed away.
Which is fitting because that song, the last song on the record, it did start with him on the guitar, acoustic guitar. He had a big role in that song, playing-wise.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is that song maybe the most directly about your guys' feelings toward Adam?
I think it's true. I think that's the one and it's the last song on the record. So it's just kind of a message at the end to Adam of like, and we both, the three of us sing together, I still love you. And so, yeah, it's our way of saying goodbye and telling him that in a way this record is made for him and for his legacy. And it's our goodbye message. Yeah.
Hey, that it's true. There's no goodbye when I still love you. It breaks more than we tried and drowns our world, but I still love you.
It just comes back to that, like, okay, something really upsetting happened, but like you found your way out and up, I would say, out and up with this album. I think it's really cool that you took the grief, whatever, and you turned it into something really beautiful and creative, and definitely honors his legacy. I mean, I have to imagine, I'm curious, did Adam's family say anything, especially that they're excited, or what have they said about this?
Well, I think they trusted us that we would do something good quality, but I think at least with his parents, they totally gave us the green light, but I don't think it's hard for them to listen to anything or, about Adam still. I think it's really hard for parents.
Yeah. And we've known his parents since we were in our 20s. I mean, so we Dominique and I meet with him, have lunch with his parents at least once a year, but we don't usually talk about Ivy. We actually stay away from it and keep it the way it always was. We're just, he's parents of one of our close friends.
On a musician to musician level, I'm curious, like for any musician listening to this right now, like I feel like a big lesson is always roll tape, right? I feel like a lot of musicians are only getting into a studio or even just recording at home when they're like ready to track an album for sure. But either because they're shy or like, I don't know, like self-conscious about their own work until it's perfect. But like, is there anything you guys can or want to say about this idea of like cataloging and documenting your progress and like your ideas, even when they're not refined?
I think, never discount any idea. Andy, one of the best qualities about Andy is he really sees the potential in stuff. You can do a really crappy little idea on the guitar and you'll be like, oh, that wasn't good. And he'll be like, oh no, wait, I know what to do with that. And then he'll go on like a tangent and an effect on it and do some stuff like that. I think, just so never really discount any idea. Like, thank God they didn't trash these, right? These could have ended up trashed. And
that was when you had to do tapes and stuff. But now that you have digital media, right? I mean, that's so much easier to just track everything.
Well, yeah. Well, to that point, in the old days, you had to be more judicious about like what you tracked because you were limited in whether it was digital, you were limited in how much storage your hard drive had. And if it was analog tape, you were limited by how many tracks there were. It was 24 tracks or less. And Adam and I always share the same philosophy, and Dominique too. And it's the same philosophy with Bruce, which is why this new album was so effortless, which is you try every idea. You do. You try every idea. And that's the wonderful thing about the digital era is like you can put every idea down. There's no limit. And so we pretty much exhaust all our creativity on every song. And then it's a matter of subtraction. The less is more philosophy. But, if somebody walked in after we had exhausted all our ideas on a song, they would think it would sound like a train wreck. There's so many. So then even more time is spent figuring out what's integral to the song and what's sort of superfluous.
Well, at some point, it's trusting your instincts too, right? Because you could have batted this around for another 10 years, but at some point you said, this is the way that this is going to be. And again, I just know too many creative people who like let things fester because it's like, well, it wasn't good in the first place. And now what am I doing trying to make this good? And you did justice by those things that otherwise could have been discarded or thrown away.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All the fans that you've had over the last 30 years are going to be stoked to hear these songs in full. And, I'm wondering too, because Andy and Dominique, you guys are married. I'm wondering over the last years since the last album and now, like, how has making this music, again, either I assume helped, you guys get closer or like, I guess what I'm trying to ask is how's your marriage, but I'm trying to find a nice way to say it.
All right. Well, let me tell you something.
Drum roll, please.
No, we technically still married, but we're not together. We have actually separated 10 years ago.
I'm with Bruce now.
Sorry.
No, there's no sorry.
Andy, you're not supposed to reveal that.
No. There's nothing to be sorry about. And actually, it would be a great conversation for another show, maybe about relationship, advice. No, so we're not together, but we're still very much together as friends and partner, musical partner, and all of that. So
and family,
family.
We have three children.
Together, and so we're not a couple anymore, but we, there was a little adjustment period, obviously, but then we remain very close as parents, as friends, and then later collaborating again, artistically, creatively. So it's really like, I would say it's very easy. It's so familiar. It's so it's actually even better now because the stakes are different in a way.
I think that's really special because you guys acknowledge the creative chemistry that has not gone away and continued that. I mean, that takes a lot of willpower, I think, because, most couples, they break up and they just never want to deal with each other at all, even with kids.
Yeah.
Like my parents, they divorce and they're like, forget it.
I don't know how many people realize, but Dominique and I were together before we started Ivy. So there's a foundation there that was already very healthy. And then we toured quite a bit, made a bunch of records in Ivy before we even had kids. So if there's any problem, it's the exterior scrutiny that we get by people looking at us and not understanding why we still seem like we're together, but we're not. So it's normal for us. It feels normal in our kids, but a lot of people, they can't sort of put it in an easy box. And that's fine. But in some ways, I like to think that we're blazing our own trail. And I think some people who are divorced and they don't talk to their ex ever, even though they have kids, or they talk through lawyers, we can't understand that, even though that's the norm, more the norm than our dynamic. But it's works, and it's still worked now. I mean, it's been 10 years that we haven't been a couple, but making this album, the last 3 years has been, it's just like getting back on the horse. Very familiar and very comfortable, which makes the ride more enjoyable, right? The musical ride, the adventure of making music again. It's fantastic.
We always conclude our interviews by asking musicians, what is like one artist that's inspiring you right now, or as a musician or just as a music fan yourself? Maybe each of you just pick one band right now that you're listening to that you want to make sure everyone knows about. We'll go Dominique, Andy, and then Bruce.
Well, actually, for me, I've been listening. I mean, I've been a big fan of Feist for a very long time, but lately I've been listening to her again, and I'm just always amazed by her creativity, her songwriting, her singing. I'm always very impressed by her.
Love it. Andy?
I still am a huge fan of the Mariahs. More recent, I'd say Lola Young. It's so hard in this day and age to like come out with something that still sounds fresh, both on a fresh voice, a fresh sounding song, and even production that's not quite like everything else. And somehow to me, she's done it.
You intrusive thoughts, you intrude on everything. This better shut you up in my mess again. Why do you come around and show me I'm right all strange?
And then Bruce, what are you listening to?
So my pick is sort of self-promotional, but not really. It's a record that Andy and I worked on back in 2010 that never came out, by this artist called Stroik. And Andy and I are working on putting out his album that never got released for various reasons. Some of them addiction, other things. He passed away. Anyway, he was, I mean, I don't use this term lightly. He was a musical genius. And he really affected the way I write, I think, making me kind of think, is this too square? Can I push this somewhere a little more left of center? And he's got a first song up kind of on the DL right now called Right Here. Stroik, Stroik. But there's going to be more music from him very soon, a whole album.
I didn't mean to change us to a fall. Well, steady promise. Never did I want to get you hurt. Damn self-conscious. Every time the yellow marker's there, the green line makes you right here.
Sounds like you guys are, between Ivy and your other side projects, very prolific, and there's so much for people to look forward to, and we're excited to hear more and more of it, and you guys are so fun to talk to, so thanks for making time to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your support.
Many thanks to Andy Chase, Dominique Durand, and Bruce Driscoll. Together, they are Ivy. Their latest album came out September 5th, called Traces of You, and they have lots more planned after this. Ivy has even more songs stored up. They're expecting to release another full-length record that builds on demos with Adam Schlesinger, and they've announced plans to perform at least one show in 2026. So keep your antenna up and follow Ivy on their website, which is thebandivy.com. And again, I'll mention, if you want to learn even more about Ivy's legacy, especially with their album Apartment Life, check out that interview that my colleague Janice Headley did with them in 2023. It's at KEXP.org, and you can just search for Apartment Life. Well, and that was a deeper listen. We want there to be a trace of you in listening to this show, so please take a moment right now to review this podcast on your favorite platform, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and tell the internet why you enjoy a deeper listen. Better yet, look up from your phone or your computer right now and tell the first person you see about this podcast from KEXP. And as always, want to give a huge shout to KEXP's community of amplifiers. That's our fun word for people who give to KEXP on a monthly basis, and it's that dependable financial backing that serves as the backbone of this station. And if you're not already, we hope you'll join this awesome community with a donation of just $6 a month at kexp.org/deeper. Thanks to Janice Headley for web design, and thanks to Matt Ogaz for audio mastering. My name is Roddy Nikpour. Thank you for taking a deeper listen. Take care. Were you literally playing Tetris, or you were like metaphorically playing Tetris?
It's probably porn.